He told me, well, I'm actually the head of the Mexican cartel for this region. When I found out that's what he did, I started thinking like, how can I work my way up? When we talk about sex, Angie, you give it away for a cheeseburger. Why wouldn't you give it away for money? It just doesn't make any sense. One night, I blacked out. I didn't remember anything. And when I came to, there were two naked men standing over me, and I was completely nude on a bed.
Angie's got a really unique story. She started a nonprofit, Safe Harbor, here in Idaho.
Yes.
Angie, can you kind of introduce us a little bit to who you are and kind of a little bit of your backstory? How did this all start?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I moved up here over 7 years ago from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we were actually divorced at the time. We've been married to each other twice. And that actually has a lot to do with the trauma that I brought into our marriage from being trafficked and all of the things. But long story short is when we started to re-date each other, we started going to church together in Albuquerque, and there was this special speaker at our church who was talking about how he was going to be starting a church in Coeur d'Alene. So my husband felt like God told him that we needed to come up here and help him. He took a little bit of time to tell me because we were fresh again. We were redating. Like, I'm Hispanic. We don't leave our families. If anything, we move in with them for the rest of our lives. So to be able to tell me, hey, guess what? We're going to leave your family and move clear across the country to an unknown place you've never heard of before was like a big deal. So, and it actually scared the crap out of me, to be perfectly honest. I didn't feel the same way that he did about it. So I just kind of went blindly on his faith and said, okay, well, let's do it. So we sold everything and we moved up here sight unseen. Didn't even have a place to live until a week before we left. And my husband has absolutely thrived here from the moment that he moved here, but I did not have the same experience. It was very culturally shocking for me here, very different from what I was used to. It took me over 4 years to really find my people. And I was dry. I was like in a desert. I'm not the kind of person that can just have like a 9-to-5 job and feel like that's good enough. I have to have purpose in my life. And I felt like I was in my purpose in Albuquerque. I was already using everything that I had gone through. I was helping youth deal with like their addictions and their trauma and their abuse. And so to be removed from that and then have nothing for 4.5 years was just an absolute horrific experience for me. So one night I was by myself at home while my husband was on a fishing league, and I was drinking a glass of wine and I was crying again, just like pissed and just like yelling at God, like, why am I here? Like, why did you bring me clear across the country away from my family? Like, I have hardly any friends. I don't know what I'm doing here. And I had a very like an out of body experience, like a vision, just like super fast. It was probably like a second, but he took me back through all of my past and everything that I had gone through. And then he took me through the last 4.5 years that I was here, the job that I had, the friends that I had met. I was already doing fundraising for 3 other nonprofits because of some people that I had met in the community. And then I had a sales job. So it forced me to build relationships in the community. It forced me to get to know people here. And then he was like, and this is why. And then he showed me what I was supposed to do. And so I immediately texted a friend of mine because I'm like, if there's no accountability and if I don't say it out loud, this never happened. And so I texted one of my girlfriends and I'm like, okay, I want to start an anti-human trafficking foundation. And I don't know what I'm doing because I've never done anything like this before. So she kind of gave me the first steps to work towards that. And it's kind of been just like a snowball effect ever since. So I'm able to use all of the things that I went through to be able to help other people. And it's a really great feeling to be able to be in my purpose.
Now, you shared during your college days that you met an individual that you trusted.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what led you down the path of where like the trafficking started?
Yes. Yeah. So I grew up very sheltered. So college was like a whole different level in my life. And I was a straight up nerd when I went to college, like very, very naive. So this group of girls kind of took me under their wing, and they were like this huge entourage of like the fun party girls, like the popular people. They kind of brought me into their friendship, and there were two businesses that we worked for during college, a gym and a Mexican restaurant, and they were owned by a partnership, like male and female lived together, but they weren't married. The man owned the gym, she owned the restaurant. We didn't realize that it was actually a way to launder money. We didn't know that what he did for a living. We just figured he was a drug dealer because he had so many new cars, and people just all these suspicions in the small town where he has to be a drug dealer. So he probably was in his 50s at the time. But he had a lot of swagger. He was super great with young people. He did like counseling for the youth. Business owner. Just people knew him. He had influence, and we loved him. Built a really solid relationship with us and with me. Since we're talking about specifically me, for a long time. I mean, I felt like he became like that kind of cool guy, yet like parental figure in my life, somebody that I would go to for everything.
Because you were in your 20s and he was like 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I genuinely felt like he loved me. And it's even weird, like even to this day, I still feel that way. It's weird.
Let's describe what you mean by love. Do you mean like fatherly love or like sexual love?
A protective love, someone I could trust like a family member. It sounds super twisted, especially when I get more into the story. But he was my go-to. Like if I was in trouble, I called him. If I was going through something emotional, I called him. But that's what he did, is he made sure he became my go-to person. And he did it intentionally. He was changing my mindset, right? Little by little, he was manipulating the way I thought. He would praise me. Like if something, like I got pulled over one time by the cops, and he was my first call, and he would praise me for it, like, oh my God, you don't know how much it means to me that I was your first call. So then it would make me want to call him again. It's like, oh wow, it made me feel so good that he was so happy that I called him. So, it would just reinforce that behavior, so that he would become my go-to person for everything. And then he'd put little things in my head that at the time I didn't really think a whole lot about it. But, when we talk about sex, he'd be like, Angie, you give it away for a cheeseburger. Like, why wouldn't you give it away for money? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. In my brain that wasn't fully developed was like, God, you're right. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Or he'd tell me things like, it's not soap. It's not going to wash away, Angie. Like, you're not going to wear it out. Like, there was just so many little things over a long period of time that were totally changing the way I thought about me, the way I thought about my life, the way I thought about life in general. And it was all intentionally. And that I didn't know at the time, that's grooming. And that's what groomers do, so that they're in complete control of what you do, how you think.
Many people wonder, why doesn't the victim just say no? Or why doesn't the victim just leave?
I literally didn't know I could say no. I actually had to train myself after recovery how to say no, because I literally didn't know how, and I didn't know that I could. It was exciting because it felt dangerous. And I liked that. And when you say, why didn't you say no? It's because I trusted him. I really honestly believe that he had my best interest at hand. And I 100% trusted this man. So when you feel like somebody really loves you and you really trust somebody, why would you want to get out of that situation? There's no reason to. I got myself into some financial trouble, which I had to quit school and get a full-time job because I needed to pay some debt off. And because I quit school, then my student loans started to threaten to garnish my wages. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even be able to live. So that's when I called my girlfriend, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this is what's happening. And so she was like, you need to we'll just call him Danny. We need to call Danny.
Thanks. Fuck. Not this, Danny.
I didn't realize.
We'll call him Danny. Why not?
So what I didn't realize at the time was that she was actually recruiting me because she was already being trafficked by this man. And so she knew that I could make some money. I'm like, cool. Well, I went to him because I thought, well, maybe, I know he had money. So I thought, well, maybe he'll lend me some money, or maybe he'll co-sign on a loan for me. Like I had all these ideas of what it was going to be. He had been waiting for me to be this vulnerable and need him this badly to be able to present what he really wanted me to do. He had groomed me for so long. When he asked me to do it, it wasn't a difficult decision.
Was he also sleeping with you?
My first time was with him. That was the deal.
And how long have you known him before that actually happened?
Geez, probably a couple of years.
So he proposes this opportunity to make some money, get yourself out of debt.
Yes.
It says a first time, but you got to do it with me first.
Yep.
Was there a reason behind that?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I think he just wanted
to have sex with a 20-year-old.
Exactly.
Okay. At this point in wherever your mind was, did you have any physical attraction to him?
There's nothing attractive about this man. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And I was scared shitless the day of. Like,
do you think he could tell? Were you giving off different body signals?
Oh, I'm sure he could tell.
Wow.
There's no way you couldn't tell. And I drank a whole bottle of hot damn before so that I could do it, so I could go through with it.
So you do this, you sleep with him, and what happens after that?
So he had business partners or clients that would come into town, all older men, that he would set me up with. And you'd actually be surprised, and I'm not going to... A lot of people that are in the celebrity realm that are paying for this.
Names that people would recognize?
Oh, yeah.
And why wouldn't you expose them?
Because I don't know if I've gotten to the place in my life where I'm not afraid anymore. Eventually, he started sending me out of town, like into the city, like which was about 4 hours away. So I would go and I'd travel back and forth all the time. I learned to never write anything down. Like I had to memorize things in my head, memorize phone numbers, memorize, hotel room numbers, like all the things. Or stop at a payphone if I needed to make a call, like because that's when I learned who I was dealing with. And so I didn't want any paper trails. I didn't want him to get in trouble, like all the things. But there was a part of me that enjoyed the danger of all of that.
When an engagement would happen, he would set you up with somebody. And you would collect money, I'm assuming. Or do they pay him?
Well, I thought, so he had me under the impression that I was in control. He knew all of my weaknesses, and he knew all of the things that that would make me want to do it more. So like titles and power and money, like he knew I loved all of that at the time. And so he made me feel like, oh, this is your thing. Let's give you a title. We'll call you the head of entertainment. And so because he knew that would just make me want to do it more.
Right.
So I thought that this was my gig. I honestly didn't think that he was controlling anything. I didn't think he was the puppet master in any way, shape, or form. And then one day I had been out with a guy and I passed out drunk and I didn't collect any money. And that was when I realized that I wasn't in control at all. That's when he threatened me.
What was a typical engagement? Were these gentlemen? Were they treating you like a prostitute?
I was such a party girl, right? So it's like, cool. Well, I'm head of entertainment. So he's got a guy coming into town and I'm going to show him a really good time. And we're going to go out and we're going to have fun and we're going to drink and we're going to do drugs. And then I'm going to make sure he has a real good time. Kind of surprised me that he knew I didn't collect the money. I thought, How do you know that?
And how much money was it typically?
$500 or more for like one night.
And how much of that would you get?
Well, I thought I was getting it all. But when he was so pissed at me for not collecting, I thought, well, what's he getting?
Well, okay. So how many times have you done this before that time?
Oh God.
Ballpark.
I don't know.
10? 100?
I don't know.
Guess a number. I mean, was it more or less than 10 times?
This was 20 years ago.
How long did this go on for?
Oh, it went on for probably 3 or 4 years.
And were you usually seeing somebody like once a week? Was it once a month?
Oh, probably maybe once a week.
Okay.
Probably once a week.
So we would say, if we went on for that, so we would say probably 100 or more times this has happened.
Probably.
And collecting the money, what would you do with that money typically?
Typically, it was my money.
You kept it?
Yeah.
He never took anything from it?
No. So that's why I was so shocked when he knew I didn't collect.
So clearly they were paying him.
Yeah. Yep. Clearly.
Did you ever find out how much?
Nope.
But I would have to guess, because when you said $500, I was expecting to hear like 5, 10 grand, 15 grand. Because we're not talking about some guy that works at Super One. We're talking about, but you've got these people walking in that definitely dropping 5, 10, 15, 20 grand is nothing.
Yes, exactly.
So you would get a tip basically, and that's how you got paid.
Yeah. I never thought to ask.
So you didn't collect money on this one occasion.
Yes.
How soon did he know?
Like the next morning.
You said you saw a side of him that you never saw before.
Yeah.
Let's hear that side.
Yeah. So he's always been very kind to me, like loving. Like I said, just I trusted him. So to hear the rage, because this was on a phone call, to hear the rage in his voice, to hear how disappointed he was in me. And then this is the thing. And this is what's the craziest thing. He threatened to never have anything to do with me again.
And that was the worst thing.
That was the worst thing ever.
So he tells you, I don't want nothing to do with you. What happens? What do you do?
It's like, I'll never do it again. I'll never not collect the money again. Don't leave me.
So what was the relationship like now going forward with him? Were you actively having sex with him still?
Oh, yeah. Yep. He would teach me things.
Sexual things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then I have to learn on him.
So you could use these new techniques
Yeah.
on your Johns.
Yep.
How many girls did he have under him that you knew of?
I only knew of 2. Well, 3 including me.
So 4 total?
But there's 3 total.
3 with you, okay.
Yeah, but 4, because there was another one with me in Albuquerque.
Do you imagine there was others?
Oh, more. In fact, some of them, it broke my heart. Like when I found out about the last one, like she was way younger than me, probably like 10 years younger than me, fresh out of high school.
Wow, so like 16, 17, 18.
Like 18 probably, okay. Yeah. And I mean, I met her in church. Like she was my little, it was just like, wow, he got you too. Okay. Yeah.
And you've talked to her?
No, not.
I mean, did she leave that life, or you don't know?
I have no idea.
Okay. So you found out she was still in the life. Okay.
Well, I was still in it. Like we didn't know that each other were in it. Right.
So at what point did you realize, I can't fucking do this? How do I now get away from this person?
It didn't wear off.
It didn't wear off.
No. We just got closer and closer and closer, he and I. And that's when he told me, well, I'm actually the head of the Mexican cartel for this region. That's when I found out what he did. Back then, I wanted to be a madam. I wanted to be a drug dealer. Like I wanted to be that power person. That's who I was then. And so when I found out that's what he did, I started thinking like, how can I work my way up? Like, how can I stop doing this and do what he does? I want his job. I had a conversation with him and I'm like, he used to call it the company. And I said, hey, I want in the company. And he's like, you do? And I said, yeah, I want in. He's like, okay, I'll figure out a position for you. And I said, okay. So this was a lot later on. He would have me meet them at hotels, like in the bar area. They would come in, we'd have a drink. And then I'd walk out to their car with them and I'd get a bag of money, whether it was a suitcase, a duffel bag, and put it in my car. Of course, I'd check it to make sure there was money in there. And then he'd tell me, pull out what you think you need to get paid. And so I'd pull out what for my payment, and then I'd get the money to him.
He would say, pull out what you think you need to get paid?
Yep.
How much would you take?
It's like $700.
Okay.
I felt like I don't want to take advantage. It seems stupid, but you know what I mean? Like, but that's probably what he loved about me, right?
Now you would still do the same job. You'd go up, entertain these guys.
Yeah.
But then you'd also collect the money.
Yeah.
So this was the money that you weren't seeing before.
Exactly.
So were they still tipping you?
Oh, yeah.
So then you would also peel off a piece of the bag.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just did a job. So I should get paid for that.
Right.
Do we want to go another route? Because this is going to shift the whole conversation.
Shift away.
I think what probably made me slow down was that I was living like 5 different lives at one time.
So in this 4-year span, mom, dad, brothers,
Nope.
sisters.
Nope.
What did they think you were doing? Did you have a relationship with your parents?
Oh, yeah.
Were you close to your father?
Yep. Like I said, I had multiple lives. I was a different person in every single situation, and nobody knew.
There's obviously a dark fucking side to this.
Yes.
So you're going through this. There must have been, was there ever any really sketchy interactions or encounters you remember where you're like, fuck?
Yeah. One night I blacked out. I didn't remember anything. And then I had a praying mother, and I think the only reason I'm alive right now is because of her, because I should be strung out in a gutter somewhere. Like I don't even know how I'm alive, but I came to, and when I came to, there were 2 naked men standing over me, and I was completely nude on a bed. And I was like, I can't do this. And I got up and I ran to the bathroom. And I was about to get gang raped.
Was this part of his thing?
I don't think so. Because of what I went through, I always put myself in really dangerous situations.
So you woke up, 2 naked dudes standing over you.
Yeah. They don't think I remember. One of the guys was actually a wrestling coach for one of the high schools. And because there's so much shame that's involved with all of it, like, I would still date him. I'd still see him. Yeah.
And he thought you didn't remember this.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to bring it up because I had no self-respect, and I didn't think I had the right to bring it up.
Do you think that happens a lot to women?
Oh, totally. For sure.
And where they don't bring it up?
Embarrassment, out of fear, criticism, all of the things. Yeah.
Has anybody experienced that? Have you found yourself in a situation where they act like nothing happened and you didn't bring it up? Drop a comment, because that seems like it's pretty common to happen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So eventually there was such an emptiness in me, and I really did want to know how to have a real relationship. Like I developed an intimacy disorder where I could not connect with people at all. And I couldn't even connect with animals. Like I couldn't understand how people had pets. I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Like I thought it was such a weird dynamic. And so I felt like I was turning into a sociopath, to be perfectly honest. Like I felt nothing. I was so cold.
Just emotionless.
Oh. And so, but I wanted to be respected. That's probably what changed things for me, is that as I was seeing guys, because I didn't know how to say no, because, I only knew sex in a certain way and all the things. And like, I could tell that that's all I was to them. Even when I wanted more, I wanted to feel something from somebody. It wasn't happening because of me. And I started to try to work on myself. Like, okay, I'm going to try, and I had these friends at the time, and they're like, why don't you try to hold out from sex like for a month, with the guys you're with. So I would try, and it was so hard. But I started to like grow that muscle. Like, okay, like okay, I'm going to go for 3 months, like, so that a man can actually have the opportunity to try to get to know me and form some sort of something with me that isn't sexual. So then maybe I could get some respect. Like I really, really wanted that. When I met my husband, I was still in my shit. This was 17 years ago, 18 years ago.
So this is like right in the midst of,
Yeah.
of the tail end of
Yeah.
the sex trafficking.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I met him, we were friends. And then we started dating after 6 months. And then he moved in with me. And I knew because of my upbringing and intellectually that this was a good man, that this was the kind of man you marry, because he didn't want to have sex with me, which was weird. In fact, I thought there was something wrong with him. I'm like, but because he didn't see me as a piece of meat, which was so totally new for me. And that was like, ding, 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 like this is the kind of man you marry. And because I had no feelings and I had no emotions, and I knew intellectually he was a good guy, I married him. But not like when people get married and they're like, oh my God, I love this man. And like,
Right.
oh, no, it wasn't like that. It was like in my head, it was like a business transaction. So we got married, and it was not an easy marriage for 7 years. It was rough because I brought all of that trauma and all of that. And I was still living, I was still in the life. And so.
Were you still doing the job?
Yeah.
And he knew?
No.
Okay. So at this point, he knew nothing about it.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
So would you just like disappear?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't come home at night.
And would he like, where are you? Would he text you?
He would, the next day, he'd like, are you having an affair? And I'd tell him no. And yeah, I mean,
Did he believe you, or?
I think he chose to believe me.
Right.
Yeah. So in all of it, I was the addict and he was the codependent. It was that relationship. Codependent people are non-confrontational. They don't really want to know the truth. Like, let's just put it under the rug and which was perfect for me.
Right.
That's why addicts and codependents work out so well together. So I lost everything. I lost him. I divorced him, and I felt like I shouldn't have at the time. I felt in my heart of hearts like I left him prematurely. It was too hard to live the life.
Well, because the alternative was come clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you self-sabotaged.
I did. Yeah, and that was pretty normal.
Which I think people watching this can relate.
Oh.
Maybe even if they didn't go through what you're going through, just you got somebody that's in active addiction and they meet a good person, at some point they're going to realize that, I hate to say it, sounds shitty, but they're not good enough for that person right now.
Yeah.
They're not. It's that person deserves better.
Yep.
And you've either got to make all the necessary changes, look at the man in the mirror, or sabotage it and make arguments out of nothing all the time and blow shit up and then bounce. So that's what you did, huh?
Yeah, I did.
And how did he take that?
It was rough. It was really rough. It's hard to think about it now because I love him so much, and to think about what I put him through and how cold I was and how I destroyed him. It's hard for me to think about now because I missed out on a lot of good things with this man because I was so fucked up. But anyways, while we were apart, he was living 5.5 hours away, and I started going to church. In fact, before we left each other, you have to understand, my husband before was an atheist. He didn't believe in God, and so because he was so desperate for our marriage, he was like, he woke up one Sunday and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to church. You can come with me or not, but I'm going. I saw that billboard about this church and I'm going to go." And I was so floored that he would even make the decision to do that. I was like, "Okay, I'll go with you." Like, cool. So when he moved away, I continued to go to that church. And they kept talking about this thing they had every Friday night called Celebrate Recovery. I didn't know what it was. And he's like, the whole thing was anybody who has any hurts, habits, or hangups, come on Friday night. And I thought, well, I got all those things, so I'll go. I felt like this drawing to go. And so I went, and it was It was all right. And then they were signing up all these women for this thing they called the step study. And I didn't know what that was. And I was just so desperate for change. And I was so desperate. I just needed an answer. I needed something. And so I'm like, okay, I'll sign up. Well, I didn't know that it was a year-long program working the steps,
When you say steps, like 12 steps?
12 steps.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did it. And I at this point I didn't know there was anything wrong with me. I just felt this drawing in, like something was leading me to do this. And so about 6 months in, you get a sponsor, all the things, and 6 months in is when I realized, oh my God, I'm the problem. I didn't know, and I shouldn't have left my husband like, oh my God, I'm going to ask for another chance, And
Was there any communication with him during this time
little,
frame? Okay.
very little. Like it was very cordial, because we still had like things in our names together and stuff like that. So, so I called him and I'm like, listen, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have divorced you. And I want you to think about giving me another chance. And he's like, oh, I'm going to have to really think about that. And I'm like, that's fine. Take all the time you need. I said, but in the meantime, I'd like to meet with you and talk to you. And I wanted to meet with him because I wanted to make sure he had the opportunity to make an educated decision. And I needed him to know everything. And so, and I was ready because I had been going through the steps. I was ready to accept all the consequences of everything I had done to him. I was finally at that place in my life. And so he came into town on a Sunday and we met in the home that we still had a mortgage on together. And I was sitting on the recliner and he was sitting on the couch. And I had kind of jotted it all down in the notes on my phone because I wanted to I didn't want to miss anything. Like I wanted him to know everything. And I was ready for him to say like, get the hell out of my life. I never want to have anything to do with you. Like I was ready for that.
This is the point where you came clean about the whole past.
Everything. Yeah. And so I started from childhood and I just worked through all of the things and my unfaithfulness and the Mexican cartel. And like, I went through it all and I couldn't even look him in the face. Like I'm weeping and crying and I was finally done and I'm just sitting there crying and I don't even want to look at him because I'm like, here it comes. Like, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready for it. And I heard him say, come here. And I looked up at him and I'm like, what? And he said, come here. And I went over to him on the couch and he held me and he told me, you deserve more love than anyone else because you've never experienced love. And I've never had anybody love me like that before. And it changed something inside of me. And he has never one time, not one time, ever brought my past up. He's never thrown anything in my face. Like, I feel like he loves me unconditionally. And I didn't even know I didn't know that existed, And so we started to rebuild our relationship. He actually ended up moving back, going through the same program I went through for his codependency because he saw such a drastic change in me that he went through the same program. And he's a totally different man too. Like he doesn't have a codependent bone in his body anymore. Like he don't give a shit what anybody thinks about him. And I respect him now because of it, I mean, he's just such a different man. And so we started recording each other and getting to know each other because we never did that before, and we started to really build a foundation in our relationship before we got remarried. Like we didn't even live together. Like we tried it a different way this time. And honestly, that like our wedding night, I was terrified of our wedding night because because of what I went through, I ended up becoming a sex addict. And so I was like sober for over 2 years. And I'm talking like
sober from alcohol, sober from sex, sober from everything.
Sober from everything.
Okay.
And I ended up, so I did all the things because addicts go balls to the wall with everything, right? So I'm in my step study. I'm in Celebrate Recovery. Then I go to another program, SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous. So I'm working that program. I got a sponsor there. You know, I was seeing this therapist as well. And so when, you know, you have to get a diagnosis. And so I had to take this really long test. And when she got my scores back, she's like, oh my God, these are the highest scores I've ever seen. Like, you're never going to get better unless you go inpatient. And like, it was incredibly discouraging. Like, I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, so a high score is not good.
Not good.
Okay.
Yeah, not good. Yeah.
I'd be like, I fucking got 100.
I know. Like, shit.
This dummy.
So, anyways, yeah. So I did all the things to try to get better. And so basically me having sex for the first time would have been like a heroin addict using again. Like, so I was really afraid of my wedding night that it was just going to reopen all the doors. And then I was just going to go back into the life that I was before. And, so yeah, it was scary, but thank God that didn't happen. Honestly, 2 years of all that recovery was like barely enough to undo everything that I had been through. And I kind of want to go back a little bit. And I thought about this earlier, but like I was raised in a really good home. Like my dad was a phenomenal father. My mom to this day is like, she's my best friend. Like she's a damn good mom. Like we were raised well. So I think a lot of people think like, oh, like, you know, she must have been neglected or, that's the thing about human nature. Anybody can be manipulated. Anybody can be coerced into doing something they never thought they would do because that's the way we are, you know?
What did your parents, because now they know, obviously. They don't know now?
No. My dad passed away 3 years ago and my mom doesn't know. I feel like I'm going to have to sit down with her at some point and tell her.
She Googles your name and a podcast comes up.
She's pretty naive. Kept it from her because I don't want to hurt her. And I feel like she's gonna take it really personal, like somehow it was her fault. And
what do you think would be for her more devastating? Her to like find out through an article or hearing it from you first?
Probably through an article.
But
Yeah.
that would be better or worse?
Worse.
Right. That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just waiting probably for the right opportunity to tell her because she's never been to any of my events for Safe Harbor. And she's like, I want to come up. And
why does she think you do this? Just because
it's a good thing to do. Yeah.
Mom's sweet.
I know.
We need to tell Mom.
I know. Because I don't think she even fully understands what human trafficking is.
Most people don't.
No.
Actually, that's a great question to the audience. So sex trafficking, what did you guys think it was prior to this? Is this what you thought it was, or did this open up your eyes to something? Drop a comment. You got remarried.
Yes.
And so now you guys are living a good relationship. You know, you speak about your husband a lot, and so he's in great accolades towards him. Is this going to be hard for him to watch?
No, I mean, he's at all of my events where I tell my story. And
have you ever told it in this depth?
There were some details that I shared today that I've never shared before.
Nobody would know this about you if you didn't share that.
No, God, no.
So now you've got this awesome organization. You're launching a podcast.
Yeah, Survivor's Voice.
Survivor's Voice. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So anybody that has survived a traumatic event, we would like to interview them. And the whole purpose is so that, you know, it's people that have already come through on the other side. They're not in the middle of the trauma, right? And so we want them to be able to tell their story so that it can encourage other people. It can foster hope, so that whoever's listening can say, "Oh my God, like they got through that," because there's some crazy stories,
right?
And so they go, "Wow, they can get through that. I think I can do it. I can do it too." And that's why it exists.